So this is after my previous tale of mild horror, a TLDR for that story. I tried to play Vampire the Masquerade, my character gets targeted and nearly killed, and the friends I made bullied me there. Anyways, after not learning my lesson, I joined a different Vampire the Masquerade Discord play-by-post server. It was run by one of the players from the problem server. They weren't one of the players I had an issue with, and hereafter shall be referred to as Storyteller. Last time, I played a socialite vampire with no combat abilities and suffered for it. So, I went the opposite direction. Grant was my supposed solution, a gangrel clan with great physical stats and a solemn demeanor. But I had apparently made a mistake. Usually, when one builds a character in Vampire the Masquerade, there is a resource stat. It is a basic determination of one's physical wealth, as there really isn't a money system. Story-wise, Grant was turned into a vampire against his will and ran away from the vamp who turned him. Unlike before, though, where problems came after playing a while, mine came immediately. The storyteller determined that since I had 0 resources in my stats, I had to begin literally nude, not even underwear. I'd understand, like, ripped jeans and dirty shirts, but somehow 0 resources translates to not even having the shirt on my back. According to the storyteller, I had to hem, haw, and argue in order to just have my character not break public decency laws. More minor problems came later, but they're hardly worth talking about. I don't play on that server and haven't talked to anyone from it in years now. You know, you'd think that this would be the most ridiculous nudity story in the video. We don't get a lot of those, so you assume this would be the only one. Oh, you naive fool. Years ago, I was invited to play AD&D with the Birthright module, so I had to learn both, though that's not the horror story. In Birthright, you play in a world where people have the blood of gods, including your characters. You also might have to rule a kingdom. Anyway, the DM was upfront that he intended for this to be difficult. There are choices were going to be punished. Of course, I didn't see an issue with this. I've run, to this day, campaigns like this. Dungeons & Dragons Tomb of Annihilation was a fun one to run under this punishing preface. So, the first campaign ended with the party dying, and that was cool. It was our choices that led us to our downfall. We were captured and put on a ship to be sold off when a kraken attacked. This gave us time to free ourselves. The intention was for us to help the pirates and befriend them as a result, but like any player, we had our own plans. Me and another player were playing halfling brothers. Halflings in this world are from the Shadow Realm originally, and we decided to use our ability to teleport ourselves and the other 2 players to the Shadow Realm. We escaped the kraken and our captors. The Shadow Realm in this campaign allowed us to see the mortal realm, but also travel it much like the Nether in Minecraft. We planned on getting overland and going back. Instead, we got an encounter and the 2 other players died. Having no other choice, me and another player decided to hop back into the mortal realm and found ourselves in the hands of a genie. Long story short, we convinced her to help us get home, but when we tried to convince her to help with food, well, she made us fetch it. This led to our deaths at the many tentacles of a giant octopus, though we did almost win. The above is important because it sets up that yes, this was going to be a hard game, but it was our choices that led to this outcome. It felt justified, cool, hard, and possible. We jump into our next campaign and roll up characters in this world. I honestly can't recall what everyone picked. I know I was a goblin and another player was a wizard. We roll our god powers and the wizard rolls the highest under the sun god, while I roll the lowest under this evil god. We decided that we'll do a single nation this time around and play with the wizard as the main ruler, while we are all underlings in charge of different things. This was perfect. His powers gave him a warm aura at all times and a ton of abilities, while the evil god I got meant I was cold and cursed to slowly become a monster as my godly blood grows stronger. Immediately, a story was in place, a path that I could take as this character, and I was excited. The DM dashed that immediately. After the first month of the city phase, we got random events rolled and the DM rolls an assassination attempt on my goblin. Instead of being reasonable or making it hard but possible, the DM decided to roll for everything about this attempt on my character's life. I expected limitations, a challenge, something fun. Instead, the DM had a level 20 wizard roll up. They scryed to tell when I was asleep and alone, teleported into my room, and reduced me to dust, gusting my ashes out into the wind so I couldn't be revived. I was given no chances, no opportunity to save myself, nothing. It had gone from challenging campaign to DM versus player, and the DM wins. Rocks fall, you die. I never spoke to the DM after that. I have no idea what the DM's motivations are, and it doesn't really matter. I'm quickly realizing that I really need to make that tabletop tavern tips on challenging D&D combat that isn't stupid, but this wasn't even combat. The DM just randomly had someone roll up on this goblin while they were asleep, and then just kill him. That's it. And while, sure, you could say that, oh, that's how most assassinations happen. That's how it goes. Some things are just random. It doesn't matter. This is a game that you're playing for fun, and that is stupid. It doesn't matter how realistic you think it is. Difficulty's purpose is to make the game more fun. At a fundamental level, that is why people make video games harder. That's why D&D difficulty exists, so that the game is more thrilling for the players. This isn't fun. People don't enjoy it, so what's the point of this quote-unquote difficulty in the first place, other than to, I don't know, get hard on killing player characters, which apparently is a thing. Love your stuff. Thanks, by the way. Here's a story for you. It requires a bit of context, so sorry if it gets rambly. The story comes from the first ever campaign I played in. A group of some of my closest friends at the time got together to play in one of my friend's completely homebrewed worlds. He had been building this world since early childhood, playing pretend, and the hard work paid off. His world was well thought out and lots of fun. I rolled up my first character and I worked really hard on the backstory. I really wanted my character to have dryad vibes, but I knew I wouldn't be able to actually play as one. The DM worked with me to make my vision come true, and I settled on a wood elven sorceress who was cursed to have plant-like physical features. She's a noblewoman who's kind of a snob. In her prim, she hunted monsters alongside her wife for sport. In this world, it was common to do that with nobility and gab about it over fancy food and drinks, kind of like some fancy country club, kind of like those intellectual gentlemen's clubs of the 1800s. After losing her wife in a hunting accident, she makes it her life mission to see the afterlife to check and make sure she's okay, and that's what set her off on this adventure. All in all, I love the world and my character, and playing with my friends was a total blast. The only two blemishes on this otherwise fantastic time both come from the same player. For the sake of the story, I'll just call her Alice. So Alice and I have only known each other through a mutual friend, another friend in the story who I'll call Beatrice. Alice kind of gave me weird vibes from the beginning, but Beatrice insisted she was fun and cool, so I stuck with it and got to know her better in the hopes that my gut was wrong. Spoiler, it was not. Alice had a tendency to make everything in-game absurd and over the top for the sake of humor. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for silliness in-game and even participated in it myself. Not to mention the other players at the table also tended to lean on the silly side as well. But I also love the meaningful roleplay, and I just wasn't getting that in this game, except for the direct roleplay with the DM and his NPCs. And the thing that set Alice apart from the other jokesters at the table was her strange sense of what was considered funny. To her credit, I don't think she was genuinely trying to be creepy. I think she just really wanted to fit in with our group, so when she saw us all goofing off together, she wanted to make a splash and decided that she needed shock value to catch our attention. The first instance of this that really got under my skin happened at a location that was story significant to my character. We needed to get into a heavily guarded city that was near one of the hunting grounds that my character used to frequent. Think a rich gated community where nobility gathered to sell their game and socialize. Luckily, the people of the city are familiar with my character, and after a deception roll from me to convince them that the rest of the party were my servants, they let us right in. Unfortunately, Alice did not play along with my plan and said something to the guards that pissed them off. It's been a long time, so I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember it was rather crass and disrespectful. This promptly got her barred from entering the city, so the rest of us would have to go on without her until she could find another way in. Now, normally, in a situation like that, you would think the player would have their character try to sneak into the city, maybe have them look for other entrances or climb the wall, or use a disguise to slip in. Hey, maybe just try to apologize to the guards in the hopes they will let you in with a good enough charisma roll, right? Apparently, that's not how Alice solves her problems. No, she walks away somewhere and, takes off all of her clothes before returning to the guards at the entrance once again. Mind you, the rest of the table is super confused and erupts with questions of why? Why?
Got arrested.
Why?
I was stripping for the guards.
Why?
These guys are rich. I assume they would be interested in hiring a certain something. Let me try to seduce them to let me in. The DM explains these guys are like high class. They aren't the type to find this sort of thing appealing at all, and instead find it way more disrespectful than what she pulled earlier. She almost gets arrested for public indecency, and my character has to bail her out of the situation. If stripping her own character in a safe-for-work game wasn't a good enough red flag, how about doing that to another player's character while they're restrained? Beatrice's character had made it her goal in life to become a demon. Why? I have no clue. And I don't think Beatrice did either. The storytelling aspect of character creation was never really her strong suit. I think she just liked the idea of playing a demon. Well, in her pursuit of demonhood, she obtains a pair of demonic boots, a cool homebrewed item that played a role in the campaign story at large. She wastes no time in trying them on, but finds that they are cursed, and sends whoever wears them into a blood rage. PvP is initiated when she attacks us. At this time, we don't know if it's the boots for a fact, but we make an educated guess, so most of us get to work trying to restrain her so we could take the boots off. Man, I wonder how they came to that brilliant conclusion. You know, Crispy Number 7's been acting kind of evil recently. Does anyone know what's up with that? Yeah, he's been kind of a villain ever since he started drinking those healing potions. Do you think that's the problem? Oh, yeah. Hey, Crispy Number 7, you think that's the problem? And now I will be a living god! You know, I actually don't think that's the issue. Nah, same. No, probably not. I managed to restrain her with a spell, and what does Alice say when her turn starts after mine? I'm gonna start taking her clothes off. Yet again, the table goes into fits and cries of why, and yet again, her explanation is lackluster at best. I don't actually know if it's the boots making her do this. It could be anything. Better to be safe, right? Mind you, the boots were the only new piece of clothing Beatrice's character had on. There was, quite literally, no reason to believe that any of her other clothes were at fault. The whole scene just gave me the creeps, especially because she was so adamant about it, trying to defend herself and explain her actions away as if they were somehow logical or reasonable. To clarify, there was nothing about this game to suggest it would be an NSFW one, or contain any themes of the sort, or any nudity. No one at the table had consented to any such thing. Everything Alice did in this game involved a similar level of absurdity, but thankfully, those were the only, real standout moments. Other than that, the game was a blast, and I would definitely play with the group again. Except for Alice. TLDR, player gets a little freaky-deaky in a safe-for-work environment, and it does not go over well. Player then one-ups herself by assaulting another player's character under the guise of helping her. It yet again does not go over well, and the player is confused on why the table is upset. You know, people often talk about learning about D&D from Matt Mercer and Critical Role, or the Stranger Things kids, and the over-the-top depictions there, but clearly this person learned about D&D through Annie Edison and her character, Hector the Well-Endowed.
Okay, great. I stroke her hair lovingly and for the appropriate amount of time before leaving.
How long is that?
If you know, you know. But anyway, look, is this kind of content okay? Sure, but in games that consent to it. This is why Session 0 is so important. Though here we show why it can sometimes not be the silver bullet that I and many others often depict it as. Some people just don't listen to you. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a Session 0. You should have a Session 0, don't be a loser. But it shows that even with a Session 0, problem players still find their way in. Some people just don't listen, and Alice is unfortunately one of those people. I empathize with Alice. Kind of. I get it. You know, we've all done embarrassing things in the name of impressing other people, but this isn't just embarrassing. This is creepy. It makes other people uncomfortable, and that's not good in any kind of social situation. Shut this kind of stuff down fast, because you don't want people to feel all icky during their free time. It was my first year in college. Like most freshmen, I was both excited and nervous about getting to meet so many new people. I eventually became friends with 3 girls from my class, Kate, Eve, and Abby. When we were talking about our hobbies, they got excited when I told them about how I was GMing for a Vampire the Masquerade campaign. They all said they wanted to play TTRPGs, especially Dungeons & Dragons. I said I would have been delighted to GM for them, but since I, unfortunately, don't have the time and resources to GM 2 campaigns, I would have to wait a bit until my schedule opened up before we could start. By the way, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I'm a non-binary person who mostly dresses femme, so I think we originally just kind of flocked together because there weren't that many women in our major. Maybe? But then we ended up becoming friends and hung out a lot. Anyway, they eventually found someone else to GM a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for them. It was some guy from class who I didn't know all that well. Let's call him Charlie. Charlie seemed very shy, but also incredibly studious and intelligent. We didn't talk a lot. My other 3 friends said I would be welcome to join them once I find the time. Fast forward to 6 months later, my Vampire the Masquerade campaign, and I had also made another good friend from another major, Angela. Angela was really fun and excited to try out D&D. When the others invited both of us, I also sent DM Charlie a private message. This was the first time we had talked beyond just small talk, and I think I messed it up by leaving a bad first impression. I wanted to check if it was okay for him to have 2 new people join. I guess in my head it made sense. I just wanted to make sure that he didn't agree to it just because the others wanted him to. He got defensive, saying he knew what he was doing, that he had GM'd for way larger groups at first timers before. I tried to explain what I meant, but when he didn't reply, I apologized for asking about that. First, we had some kind of mid-campaign session 0 when Angela and I joined. Angela, who was meeting everybody for the first time, hit it off super well with the rest of the group, and we were all cracking jokes and having a good time. I played a dwarven paladin who grew up in a cult. It was nice to see that everyone seemed to like my idea. The only thing I remember was Charlie asking if I had ever had any TTRPG experience. I said I had been a player in a D&D campaign before, and he went, "So, you've never actually been a GM?" I said something along the lines of, not in D&D, but I have been GMing since high school, mostly Vampire the Masquerade. Somehow the mention of Vampire the Masquerade made him burst into cackling laughter, and the rest of us kind of chuckled along. I thought that maybe he had just been nervous or surprised or something. I didn't know what was so funny, but I was sure he was laughing with me, not at me. He then said in a dramatic tone, "Vampire the Masquerade," and rolled his eyes. I thought it was some light teasing. I laughed and said something along the lines of him being cheekier than I expected him to be, which might have been the second time I messed up because he just exchanged a glance with one of the other girls after that. We start playing the actual game in the next session, but these moments where I would say something and he would burst into laughter just kept piling up. I was not trying to be funny, so I started feeling more and more confused. He didn't do this with the others, but it wasn't enough at first to justify speaking out. I mean, maybe it was just his thing. Yeah, sometimes just being a dick is your thing. Oh crap, my spleen! It's fine. Just his thing. The first time I felt like it hurt was 2 sessions later, when we were investigating something in-game and heading to a church. There were NPCs around, so I suggested in character that we could ask around if anybody has seen or heard something. Again, Charlie, as the GM, started to wheeze and laugh. The others then proceeded as if nothing had happened, and I got ignored in and out of character. I then just said something like, actually, that wasn't supposed to be a joke. It was an honest suggestion. I remember Charlie being annoyed when I said that for some reason. There was just kind of an awkward silence after that, and then Kate just sighed after a while and said we probably wouldn't want to waste time and attract attention, so that was a pretty bad idea. At the moment, I wasn't sure if she was saying this in or out of character either, but I was super surprised by the way everyone acted, so I didn't say anything more. I mean, we weren't investigating a secret, but it was still a fair point. It's fine to reject an idea, but the way everyone acted irked me a little bit. This kept happening, and sometimes I would even mention that it made me uncomfortable. When I did say something, the mood would instantly get painfully awkward. Some of the things Charlie inappropriately laughed at include when I made a mistake calculating something in battle, when I forgot that I had a spell that could have been useful in a specific situation, although I was sure I had already used that spell slot, when we were talking about homework before the session, I honestly mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the amount, when I cheered for the others about good roll or good idea, or when I complimented the picture Eve drew of her character. Every time my character wanted to do something that wasn't just go along with whatever another character was doing, like when we were all standing in front of one chest trying to unlock it, and I said my character would investigate the room more closely or something like that. When I mentioned not feeling well and having to leave early. Then, when we gave feedback about the session, I tried one final time to convey how I felt about this. I implied that I had often been made fun of in school, and that this made me feel the same way. Like, whatever I did was somehow ridiculous. Charlie and the 4 other players were trying to tell me how it was a misunderstanding. I then asked Charlie what he meant. Like, why did he think it was so funny when I said really basic things? I didn't understand his explanation. He said he was just laughing because he felt like it. Was it a nervous laugh? No, it was just a laugh. But then, why was I the only one he did this to? It was a coincidence? I then asked, even if Charlie didn't have any bad intentions, could we maybe just tone it down a bit as a personal request or a favor considering how unwelcome I felt? Like, I had already explained my situation from the past and why this was so hard on me. And he laughed. Again, in the same drawn-out, cackling way, asking if I intended to ban smiles and laughter at the table. Everyone seemed pissed off. I tried to explain my perspective, and they just said I shouldn't be so sensitive. Eventually, I had to get home. Once I realized how drained I felt and how I really wasn't enjoying myself, I decided to text DM Charlie. I once again sought to explain why I was struggling with the group dynamic. I also told him I had concluded that maybe it would be better if I left the group. I had a lot of other stress with schoolwork and everything, so I assured Charlie it wouldn't just be because of the laughing. He said that all of us had a lot of work to do for school, some of us much more than me specifically, and that leaving was a pretty garbage thing to do. It would be a big letdown for everyone who put so much work into this campaign. I apologized, but I stood by my decision. I did, however, agree to play one final campaign so we could play it out as my character leaving. I didn't expect everyone to be so pissed at me. I had somehow become that guy. My friends were kind of avoiding me. Kate asked why I just never talked to Charlie about this, but I said I tried to. I tried many times. As that final session crept closer and closer, and the others even met up for things like studying or going to the movies and stuff without telling me, I got more and more anxious about how this was going to suck. Eventually, I just cut my losses and canceled the goodbye campaign. I ended up dropping out of college for unrelated health reasons after that, although it certainly didn't help that my entire friend group made me feel like a dick even though I tried to get along with them. I don't see them anymore. The last thing I heard was that Charlie and Angela, the woman I had introduced to the friend group, had started dating. I don't know if it was because I was queer or not as pretty as the other players, or because he felt intimidated that I already had some experience, or maybe because I actually messed up too much, but I still don't understand why everybody treated me like this and what my ex-friends saw in this guy who was being unnecessarily mean and refusing to see things from my point of view. Disclaimer, like I say with situations like this is a biased perspective. We're getting one side, but we're jumping into the was true dimension when we start thinking like that. So let's just look at this and see what we can do with it. I and many others think that the OP is getting massively gaslighted by their group. I have no idea if Charlie is solely behind this. Maybe the other people in the group are just as guilty. Maybe Charlie is solely spreading rumors, but otherwise, it doesn't really matter. We can speculate until our eyes turn to dust, but what matters is this. This group, they're not treating you right. Getting laughed at constantly is not okay. What's really confusing, though, is that they try to keep you around, almost like a punching bag. Let me tell you this, you don't need to be anyone's punching bag. You should feel free to bail out of these groups, and if they try to keep you around, bail out faster. At the end here, if you know me, you probably know that I have a similar sense of humor to our bad guy in the story, Charlie. I make fun of my friends a lot, but they're my friends. They understand that, and they laugh along with me, and sometimes they laugh at me, and I'm okay with that because we're friends. This is a brand new person to a group, and they're making fun of them for basically no reason. Not cool. This isn't nearly as dark as some of the other stories shared here, really just an unfortunate misunderstanding that was happily resolved, but trigger warning for the usual topics all the same. I was in a campaign between late 2019 and March of 2020. Low-level campaign, homebrew world reminiscent of Eberron. We were all co-workers and ranged from being friends to at least being friendly with each other, so no strangers. The party consisted of myself playing a rapier-wielding tiefling bard, a human paladin, a human fighter, a Horforged druid, and an Eladrin bard. Our dungeon master, our fighter, and I were all veteran players, and the druid, paladin, and bard were all first-timers. The druid and other bard were both women IRL, which is relevant. I'm a guy, which is also relevant. What proceeded over the 5-ish month campaign could be easily described as normal Dungeons & Dragons. We bantered, we fought, we negotiated, we roleplayed, we led a revolution, we uncovered a conspiracy, all that good stuff. Everybody was happy. There were no incidents. I want to be as clear as possible. I in no way was playing a problematic bard. No hitting on barmaids, no hitting on other players, no seducing my way into or out of trouble. My character wasn't into the hinky-dinkies in any way, nor was anybody else's characters. We were having good, clean fantasy fun. The issue that prompts me to make this post came up at around the 2-month point. We had finally hit level 3, at long last, as our dungeon master was very stingy with experience, and we're all ready to take subclasses. Having always planned to go college with swords, I eagerly made my choice known and traded in my rapier for a pair of scimitars. After that session, the other players privately, awkwardly thanked me for finally changing my weapon choice, which confused me. Oh, crap. After a series of tactful back and forth questions in search of clarity, I came to the extremely uncomfortable realization that the two newbie female players, eager to learn about the game but with no frame of reference for how things worked and with little background in fantasy, had thought that the sword I'd been using was called... They didn't know what a rapier was, and it hadn't occurred to anybody else to, explain it. For 2 months, 2 women who I was friends with and worked closely with had been putting up with the idea that my fantasy persona was a charismatic musician with that. Their introduction to Dungeons & Dragons consisted of everybody acting like it was normal for one of the players to be carrying around a no-no stick as their primary weapon. I was mortified. Fortunately, this proved to be something that was easily explained. Between Google images and references to Princess Bride, I quickly clarified what a rapier was, much to their relief. The party continued, and we are all still friends, but I give a lot to rewind back to the start of the campaign and clarify what weapon I was wielding, because I'm incredibly embarrassed by what they must have thought of me for those last 2 months. You know, it happens sometimes where you say something, you don't think about it, and then eventually you realize, oh crap, people took that the wrong way. And the best thing you could do is what this guy did, or at least what I assume this guy did: explain and apologize. This is certainly not a horror story. Everything worked out, but it could have easily become one if our writer here acted defensive, or even worse, got just straight up upset, which is something we have seen before. Look, sometimes you don't mean harm, but how much harm are you causing by saying sorry? I mean, your pride is going to recover, I promise. In scenarios like this, scenarios of mundane misunderstanding, saying sorry is the best thing you can do, even if you're not entirely at fault, even if you didn't do anything blatantly wrong. I mean, I don't think this guy did anything blatantly wrong at all. However, saying sorry and then explaining what happened, that is the best thing you can do. That's what happened here, and that's why this isn't a horror story, because everybody acted like adults. Good to see. And that's going to be it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Tavern adjacent podcast where we talk about all things D&D. One Shot Questers is coming on the show this week, which is very exciting. So if you want to check that out, it's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. Please don't seduce the guards to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Oh, hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them to us. Email linked in the description. But even if you don't have any stories, it doesn't like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.